For most of my life, I believed education was the only way out of poverty. I was born in a small village where almost everyone knew each other. The roads were rough, electricity came and went when it felt like it, and opportunities were as rare as rain during the dry season. My father was a schoolteacher. I mean primary school teacher. He wasn't rich, but in our community, people respected him because he could read, write, and teach others. He also had 3 wives. My mother was the youngest and last wife. My name is Joe. But before I tell you what happened, I need you to understand something. For 14 years, I lived a lie I didn't even know existed. Then, just when I finally rebuilt my future, a devastating accident took my left leg. And when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my own brother took the money that was supposed to help my family survive. What happened next changed the way I see trust, family, and revenge forever. If you enjoy powerful revenge stories filled with betrayal, resilience, and unforgettable life lessons, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Revenge Stories with Rinsula, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in a polygamous family wasn't easy. Resources were limited, and every child competed for attention, support, and opportunities. Sometimes it felt like there was never enough to go around. While some of my siblings accepted that life would always be difficult, my mother refused to believe that for me. She had never gone far in school herself. She spent her days as a petty trader, carrying goods to the market under the hot sun and returning home exhausted. Yet somehow, she always found a way to pay my school fees. There were times she sold her belongings to keep me in school. There were times she skipped meals without telling anyone. Only later did I realize how much she sacrificed. Every evening, she would sit beside me while I studied by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. "Joe," she would say, "education is something nobody can steal from you." Those words became my motivation. I worked hard in primary school and continued pushing myself through high school. Whenever I felt tired, I remembered my mother's sacrifices and promised myself I would never let them go to waste. I dreamed of becoming a respected professional one day. I imagined building a better house for my mother. I imagined lifting my family out of poverty. I imagined proving that a village boy could become something great. By the time I reached my final year of high school, everyone around me believed I would succeed. My teachers believed it. My mother believed it. Even I believed it. The future seemed close enough to touch. All I needed was a good result in my high school. I studied harder than I ever had before. I stayed awake late into the night. I sacrificed sleep, comfort, and entertainment because I believed my entire future depended on those exams. When the examination finally ended, I felt confident. Not perfect, but confident. I was certain that all my hard work would pay off. Weeks later, the results were released. I remember standing among dozens of nervous students as everyone rushed to check their grades. Some people celebrated. Others cried. My hands shook as I searched for my own result. And when I finally saw it, my world stopped. When my high school diploma arrived, I had no idea it would change the course of my entire life. The moment I saw my high school diploma, I felt all the air leave my body. 4 passes. Only 4. Not enough to gain admission into any university. Not enough to pursue the future I had spent years dreaming about. Not enough to justify all the sacrifices my mother had made. I stared at the paper again and again, hoping I had made a mistake. Maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe there was another page. Maybe someone else's result had been mixed up with mine. But the truth was staring back at me. I had failed. The walk home that day felt longer than any journey I had ever taken. I didn't know how I would face my mother. I didn't know what I would tell the neighbors who had always praised me. I didn't know what would happen to my future. When I finally arrived home, my mother looked at my face and immediately knew something was wrong. She didn't ask many questions. She simply sat quietly as I handed her the result. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then she placed a hand on my shoulder. "We will find a way," she said softly. I wanted to believe her. But deep inside, I felt broken. Over the following months, things became even harder. One by one, my friends left for universities and colleges. Every week I heard news about someone gaining admission. Someone moving to the city. Someone starting a new chapter in life. Meanwhile, I remained behind. Stuck. Embarrassed. Ashamed. Every conversation seemed to remind me of what I had lost. People began asking questions. "Joe, which university are you attending? When are you leaving for school? What course are you studying?" Each question felt like a knife twisting deeper into an open wound. Then, just when I thought all hope was gone, an uncle stepped forward. He was a respected relative who often claimed to have important connections. One afternoon, he called me aside. "Don't worry," he said confidently. "I know people in the university system. I can help secure admission for you." For nearly 2 years, I believed I was a college student. I told relatives I had been admitted. I told friends I was pursuing my future. Most importantly, I told myself that the nightmare of my failed high school diploma results was finally behind me. At first, everything seemed normal. Whenever I asked my uncle about registration documents or school updates, he always had an answer ready. "The paperwork is still being processed. The school is updating its records. There's a temporary administrative delay." Every excuse sounded reasonable. After all, he was family. Why would I doubt him? But as the months passed, small things started to bother me. Friends who had gained admission talked about classes, professors, assignments, and examinations. Meanwhile, I never received a student identification card. I never attended orientation. I never got official school emails. Every question I asked was met with another explanation. Another promise. Another delay. The doubts grew quietly at first. Then they became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, I decided to visit the institution myself. I didn't tell my uncle. I wanted answers directly from the source. I still remember standing in the administration office, sweating despite the cool air inside the building. The woman behind the desk searched for my name. Then she searched again. And again. Finally, she looked up. "I'm sorry," she said. "There's no record of you here." I laughed nervously. "There must be a mistake." She shook her head. "There isn't." My heart started racing. I showed her every document I had. Every receipt. Every admission letter. Everything. She examined them carefully. Then she said the words that changed my life. "These documents aren't genuine." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. 2 years. 2 entire years. Gone. Not because I failed. Not because I gave up. Not because I made bad decisions. Because someone I trusted had lied to me. Someone I called family. I left the office in a daze. The city noise sounded distant. Cars passed. People walked by. Life continued as if nothing had happened. But my world had just collapsed. When I confronted my uncle, he denied everything. Then he blamed other people. Then he claimed he had been trying to help. The excuses didn't matter anymore. The damage was already done. I couldn't bear the thought of returning home. I couldn't face my mother. She had spent years believing I was building a future. The entire village believed it. How could I tell them the truth? How could I explain that I wasn't a student at all? That I had been living inside a lie? Instead of going home, I left. I packed what little I owned and disappeared into the city. I told myself I needed time. Time to think. Time to heal. Time to figure out what came next. I thought losing 2 years was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. When I left home, I thought I'd be gone for a few months. Maybe a year. Instead, I spent the next 14 years carrying a secret that slowly ate away at me. At first, I convinced myself I would quickly fix everything. I'd find a way back into school. Earn a real degree. Return home with good news. Nobody would ever know what happened. But life rarely follows our plans. The city was unforgiving. Rent was expensive. Jobs were scarce. And every opportunity seemed to require qualifications I didn't have. So I took whatever work I could find. Construction sites. Warehouses. Security jobs. Delivery work. Anything that paid enough to survive another week. Some nights I slept in overcrowded rooms shared with strangers. Other nights I slept on floors. Sometimes I skipped meals to save money. Yet the hardest part wasn't the poverty. It was the lie. Back home, everyone believed I was a graduate. My mother proudly told neighbors about her educated son. Relatives spoke about me as though I had succeeded. Friends assumed I was building a professional career somewhere. Every phone call became an acting performance. Every family gathering became something I avoided. I hated lying. But after so many years, telling the truth felt impossible. The longer the lie survived, the bigger it became. And the bigger it became, the harder it was to destroy. Years passed. Then more years. I watched former classmates become lawyers, engineers, teachers, and business owners. Social media made it even worse. Every promotion. Every graduation photo. Every success story reminded me of everything I had lost. Sometimes I blamed my uncle. Sometimes I blamed myself. Most of the time, I simply felt trapped. Like a man standing outside a window, watching everyone else's life move forward. By the time 14 years had passed, I was exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. I had spent so long pretending to be someone I wasn't that I barely recognized myself anymore. For years, I had carried my secret like a prison sentence. Every conversation felt dangerous. Every relationship felt temporary. I was terrified that if people learned the truth, they would see me as a fraud. So when I finally told her everything, I expected her to leave. Instead, she surprised me. After I finished telling my story, she sat quietly for a moment. Then she asked a question no one had ever asked before. "Joe, if you could go back, what would you do differently?" I looked down at my hands. "I'd go back to school." She smiled. "Then why don't you?" The question caught me off guard. Because for 14 years, I had focused so much on what I'd lost that I'd stopped thinking about what was still possible. I laughed bitterly. "I'm too old." She shook her head. "No. You're scared." The truth hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. I wasn't trapped by age. I wasn't trapped by money. I was trapped by fear. Fear of failing again. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of discovering that my dream was already dead. Over the following months, she refused to let me quit on myself. Whenever doubt crept in, she challenged it. Whenever I made excuses, she confronted them. Slowly, something changed inside me. For the first time in years, hope returned. Not all at once. Just a little at a time. Enough to take the first step. I enrolled to retake my high school diploma examinations. The same exams that had once shattered my future. The same exams that haunted me for years. Balancing work and studying wasn't easy. Most days, I left for work before sunrise and returned home exhausted. Yet every night, I opened my books. Sometimes I studied until 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes I fell asleep with notes scattered across the bed. But this time felt different. This time I wasn't studying for other people's expectations. I was studying for myself. Then another blessing arrived. My wife became pregnant. When our first child was born, everything changed. Holding that tiny child in my arms gave me a reason to fight harder than ever before. Failure was no longer an option. Months later, the exam results arrived. I was terrified to open them. My hands shook just like they had years earlier. But this time, the outcome was different. I had passed. Not barely. Not by luck. I had truly passed. For the first time in 14 years, I felt free. Soon afterward, I applied for admission to study journalism. When the acceptance letter arrived, I stared at it for nearly an hour. I read it over and over again. Because after 14 years of lies, setbacks, and lost opportunities, I finally held something real in my hands. A real admission. A real future. A real second chance. For the first time in years, my future finally seemed within reach. Starting college as an older student wasn't easy. Most of my classmates were younger. Many of them had followed a normal path through life. Graduate high school. Enter college. Earn a degree. Meanwhile, I felt like a man trying to catch a train that had left the station years ago. But I refused to be intimidated. Every day I reminded myself of everything it had taken to get there. The fake admission. The lost years. The shame. The struggle. I had already survived too much to quit now. College quickly became a balancing act. I was a husband. A father. A student. And often the only source of income for my family. There were days when I attended lectures with barely enough money for transportation. There were nights when I worked late and still had assignments waiting for me at home. Sleep became a luxury. Rest became a memory. Yet somehow, I kept going. My wife carried more of the burden than anyone else. She worked tirelessly. Supported the household. Encouraged me whenever I felt overwhelmed. More than once, I considered dropping out. More than once, I questioned whether I was being selfish. But every time I thought about quitting, she refused to let me. "We've come too far," she would say. "Finish what you started." So I did. Semester after semester. Assignment after assignment. Examination after examination. Slowly, graduation moved from being a distant dream to becoming a visible reality. My lecturers began noticing my determination. Classmates respected my work ethic. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something solid. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was becoming the man I had always wanted to be. As graduation approached, I found myself dreaming again. Dreaming about a journalism career. Dreaming about financial stability. Dreaming about finally giving my wife and children the life they deserved. Most of all, I dreamed about helping my mother. The woman who had sacrificed everything for me. I imagined handing her the first meaningful gift I could afford. I imagined seeing pride in her eyes. After decades of struggle, it finally felt like life was preparing to reward me. I had survived failure. I had survived betrayal. I had survived 14 lost years. At last, the future seemed bright. Then, just as life was beginning to reward me, tragedy struck. There are moments in life that divide your story into two parts. The life before. And the life after. For me, that moment came on an ordinary day that began like any other. I was focused on finishing my journalism program and preparing for graduation. My wife and I were already talking about the future. For the first time in decades, those conversations didn't feel like fantasies. They felt real. I was finally close to becoming the man I had always wanted to be. Then everything changed. I was traveling home when the accident happened. One moment, I was thinking about my family. The next, I heard screaming tires. Metal crashing. Glass shattering. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed. At first, I couldn't understand where I was. Machines beeped around me. People moved in and out of the room. My body felt heavy. Every movement brought pain. I tried to sit up. That's when I noticed something was wrong. Very wrong. I looked down toward my legs. And my heart stopped. My left leg was gone. For several seconds, I simply stared. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I blinked repeatedly. Surely I was confused. Surely I was hallucinating. Surely this couldn't be real. Then a doctor entered the room. The look on his face told me everything before he even spoke. The injuries had been severe. The damage was too extensive. The surgeons had done everything possible. But there was no way to save my leg. As he explained the procedure, I heard almost nothing. The words became distant noise. My thoughts were trapped on a single question. Why? Why now? After everything I had survived. After 14 lost years. After finally getting my life back on track. Why now? For weeks, I struggled to accept reality. Some days I was angry. Other days I was numb. There were moments when I stared at the hospital ceiling and wondered if all my sacrifices had been for nothing. I worried about my wife. I worried about my children. I worried about whether I would ever work again. Whether I would ever walk normally again. Whether I would ever feel like myself again. The emotional pain was sometimes worse than the physical pain. But during that dark period, something happened that restored a little of my faith in people. Members of my community began showing up. Friends organized donations. Former classmates contributed money. People I barely knew offered support. Even my school management stepped in to help. Their kindness kept my family afloat during the worst period of our lives. Yet while strangers were helping me survive, many of the relatives I expected to stand beside me were nowhere to be found. Some never visited. Some never called. Some acted as though my suffering was someone else's problem. Ironically, the people who stood by me the most were my mother's brothers. The same family members who had very little themselves. They visited regularly. Encouraged me. Supported my wife. Reminded me not to give up. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. The recovery was painful. Learning to move again was humiliating. Simple tasks became challenges. But eventually, I left the hospital. I thought surviving the accident was the hardest battle I would ever face. I thought the worst was finally behind me. I was wrong again. I thought the worst was over when I left the hospital. I was wrong again. Leaving the hospital was both a blessing and a burden. I was grateful to be alive. But reality arrived quickly. Medical bills had drained our savings. My ability to work was limited. My family still depended on me. And every day I worried about how we would survive. Then an idea gave me hope. Using part of the donations and financial support I had received, I planned to buy a small vehicle. It wasn't going to make us rich. But it could provide income. I could hire a driver or eventually use it for transportation services. For the first time since the accident, I could see a path forward. A way to rebuild. A way to support my wife and children. A way to regain some independence. As I shared my plans with family members, one person seemed particularly supportive. My brother. He listened carefully. Asked questions. Offered advice. And then one day, he approached me with what sounded like an even better opportunity. According to him, he had access to a transportation business that needed short-term funding. The returns would be much higher than anything I could earn with a single vehicle. He spoke confidently. Persuasively. Like someone who genuinely wanted to help. "We're family," he said. "I'd never lead you in the wrong direction." He promised the money would be returned quickly. He promised the investment was safe. He promised that within a short period, I would have enough to buy an even better vehicle. Part of me hesitated. After everything life had put me through, trust didn't come easily anymore. But this was my brother. Not a stranger. Not a businessman. Not someone I had just met. Blood. Family. Someone who had grown up beside me. Someone who knew exactly what I had endured. And because of that, I convinced myself he would never betray me. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't just trusting him. I was trusting the idea of family. I wanted to believe that some bonds were unbreakable. That some people would always protect you. Especially when you're at your lowest. So I handed over the money. Nearly everything I had left. The money that represented my family's future. The money that represented my recovery. The money that represented my second chance. As he walked away with it, I felt hopeful. Relieved. Optimistic. I genuinely believed better days were coming. I had survived 14 stolen years. I had survived a devastating accident. Surely life wouldn't knock me down again. I had no idea that the next betrayal would hurt more than both of them combined. That decision would cost me more than money. At first, I wasn't worried. My brother had promised the money would be returned quickly. A few weeks passed. Then a month. Then another. Whenever I asked for an update, he always had an explanation. The business is still running. The funds are tied up. Give me a little more time. Each excuse sounded reasonable. After all, unexpected delays happen in business. At least that's what I told myself. I wanted to trust him. I needed to trust him. Because accepting the alternative meant accepting that my own brother had taken advantage of a man who had just lost his leg. And I wasn't ready to believe that. Months turned into a year. Then another. The excuses became less convincing. The phone calls became shorter. The promises became rarer. Sometimes he ignored my messages completely. Sometimes he acted offended that I was asking for my own money. As though I was the unreasonable one. As though I had done something wrong. Meanwhile, my family's situation remained difficult. Every day was a struggle. The transportation business I had planned never happened. The vehicle I intended to buy remained a dream. Opportunities came and went because I lacked the resources to pursue them. There were nights when I sat awake wondering how different life would have been if I had simply followed my original plan. My wife never complained. Not once. Even when she had every right to. She continued supporting our family. Continued encouraging me. Continued believing in me when I struggled to believe in myself. And that made the betrayal hurt even more. Because it wasn't only my future that had been stolen. It was hers too. It was our children's. As time passed, something else became impossible to ignore. My brother's situation was improving. He seemed comfortable. Financially stable. Progressing. While my family remained trapped. Every new success he experienced felt like another reminder of what had been taken from me. Eventually, I stopped asking for explanations. I stopped asking for promises. I stopped expecting accountability. Because deep down, I finally understood the truth. The money was never coming back. The person who had taken it had no intention of keeping his word. And the hardest part wasn't losing the money. It was realizing who had taken it. Not a scammer. Not a stranger. Not a dishonest businessman. My own brother. The same person who had looked me in the eye. The same person who knew exactly what my family was facing. The same person who knew that money represented our chance to rebuild after the accident. That realization changed something inside me. For years, I had waited for life to become fair. I had waited for other people to do the right thing. I had waited for promises to be honored. But sitting there one evening, watching my children sleep, I finally accepted a painful truth. Nobody was coming to rescue me. Not my uncle. Not my brother. Not anyone. That was the moment I stopped waiting for rescue. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the people we trust the most. My uncle stole years of my life. My brother took the opportunity that could have changed my family's future. and the accident took my leg. But none of them took my ability to keep moving forward. Because true revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is building a life that your enemies never expected you to have. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own journey, let me know in the comments below. I read as many comments as I can, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Revenge Stories with Rinsula, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that setbacks don't have to define their future. Until next time, remember, your struggles are part of your story. They do not have to become your ending. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next revenge story.